The sound that started it all wasn't gunfire or a siren or anything you'd expect to change a man's life. It was the sharp slap of a U.S. passport hitting an airport floor. The kind of sound that cuts through a crowd and freezes people mid-sentence. 72-year-old Sergeant Elijah Brooks had heard louder sounds, mortar shells, screaming Jets men calling out for medics. But this one struck somewhere deeper. Because it didn't come from war, it came from disrespect. It happened on a gray Tuesday morning at Gate C-12 Atlanta International Airport. Elijah was flying to Boston to attend the funeral of an old Marine brother, Corporal Danny White, who'd once saved his life in Vietnam. The flight wasn't full, the air smelled of coffee and jet fuel, and the gate line moved slow. He carried a small leather bag, a folded newspaper, and that worn navy blue passport that had been stamped on 5 continents. The edges were frayed, the cover soft from years of use, like a flag that had done its duty. When he stepped to the counter, the young gate agent didn't even look up. "Name," she said flatly. "Elijah Brooks. Reservation under the Veterans Travel Assistance Program." She typed with long pink nails, gum-snapping irritation leaking out of every motion. Finally, she looked up and paused. Her eyes scanned his face, then the old jacket with the USMC pin on the lapel. "Sir, this passport looks old," she said. "Maybe expired." Elijah smiled politely. "Renewed it last year, ma'am. It's good till 2032. She flipped it once, shrugged. "Yeah, everyone says that." Then she tossed it. Not slid it back, tossed it like a receipt she didn't need. The little book spun once and hit the tile with that sound, the slap that started everything. For a second, nobody moved. The man in line behind him lowered his phone. A kid tugged on his mother's sleeve. The air seemed heavier. Elijah stared at the passport on the ground. 50 years ago, he'd watched a comrade bleed out beside a muddy road in Quang Tri. He'd learned then that some things aren't worth exploding over. He bent down slowly, knees cracking, joints stiff from years and weather, and picked it up. When he stood, his voice was calm but sharp as glass. "Ma'am," he said, "that book has seen more battlefields than you've seen boarding passes." A ripple went through the line. The agent frowned, defensive. "Sir, please, calm down. If you keep raising your voice, I'll have to call security." Elijah gave a small, patient smile. "You think this is me raising my voice?" He slipped the passport back into his pocket. "I fought for a country that used to teach manners before management. Maybe that's changed." The girl blinked, unsure how to respond. The people behind him began whispering, some sympathetic, others uncomfortable. A supervisor poked his head out from behind a computer screen. "Everything okay here, Sam?" She straightened. "Passengers being difficult." Elijah turned slightly, addressing them both. "Just trying to board a plane. But if standing my ground makes me difficult, then I've been difficult since 1968. The words hung in the air like a slow drumbeat. The supervisor frowned. "Sir, maybe we should step aside and—" Elijah raised a hand. "No need, son. I'm already stepping aside." He moved away from the counter, quiet, composed. No shouting, no scene. Just the kind of silence that carries weight. He sat down near the window overlooking the runway. Planes were lifting off silver birds against a dull morning sky. And in that stillness, his mind drifted not to anger but to memory. To the face of Danny White, that 19-year-old kid from Alabama who once pulled him out of a burning Jeep. To the nights they talked about how when the war ended, they'd come home to a country that might finally understand what respect meant. But respect was still a battlefield, even here 50 years later at Gate Sud 12. He watched the agent laugh with a coworker, pretending nothing had happened. She checked her phone, smiled, unaware that anyone was watching. Elijah felt a low pulse of heat rise behind his chest, but it wasn't rage. It was purpose. He reached for his notebook, the small black leather one he always carried, and began writing. Incident, Gate C-12, Atlanta International, approx. 08:47 a.m. He described everything. Her tone, her gesture, the witnesses, the line length, even the flight number overhead. Years in the Corps had taught him to document before reacting. A young man sitting nearby leaned over. "Sir, I saw what she did. You want me to send you the video? I got it on my phone." Elijah nodded once. "Keep it safe, son. Don't post it yet." The man blinked. "You don't want this online." "Not yet," Elijah said. "Some battles you fight face to face, not behind a screen." He closed the notebook and looked out at the tarmac. Another plane rose into the sky, engines low and steady, disappearing into cloud. He whispered to himself, "Hold the line." It was what his old commander used to say whenever chaos tried to break discipline. The boarding announcement echoed through the speakers, muffled and routine. The same voice that had disrespected him now cheerfully invited passengers to line up. Elijah stayed seated. He wasn't boarding. Not that flight. Not that airline. He'd already decided this wasn't over, not in the shouting sense, but in the Marine sense of finishing a mission. He stood, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the exit. As he passed the counter, the agent avoided his eyes. He paused, looked at her badge, and quietly said, "One day, you'll learn that power without respect is just noise." Then he walked away. Outside, the air smelled of rain. He stood under the awning phone, buzzing in his pocket messages from his daughter, asking if he'd landed yet. He typed back, "Flight delayed. Tell the family I'll be there soon." He slipped the passport into his chest pocket right over his heart. And as the drizzle began to fall, he whispered the same words he used to tell his men before a mission. "We don't lose control. We take it back." The battle for dignity had begun not with fists, but with silence. Elijah Brooks drove home in silence. The rhythmic hum of his truck was the only sound between thoughts that came and went like old ghosts. He didn't replay the humiliation, he replayed his reaction. How calm he'd been. How restrained. He'd spent a lifetime learning that calm wasn't weakness. It was the last weapon a soldier had when everything else failed. By the time he reached his modest brick house on the outskirts of Savannah, the sun had already dropped low. The porch light flickered on automatically, and the American flag on his front post moved gently in the breeze, faded but still proud. He stepped inside, hung his jacket, and placed the passport on the table. It looked innocent again, as if nothing had happened, but Elijah knew better. Objects carry memory, scars, energy. He made a pot of coffee, black and strong, and sat down at the old oak table. Beside him lay a folder of letters. Commendations, discharge. Papers, photos of men he hadn't seen in decades. One photo caught his eye, a young Marine squad standing in ankle-deep mud, smiling despite the chaos behind them. He touched the face of a blonde kid, Danny White. "Missed your funeral, brother," he murmured, "but I think I've got one last mission in me." Elijah wasn't a man of technology, but he knew people who were. He still kept contact with his old military network, men and women who had traded rifles for laptops, patrols for policy. He opened his laptop and began typing a message to an old friend, Tom Rourke, a retired Air Force journalist, now freelancing for local news. Subject line: incident at Gate C-12 Atlanta. He described the event in detail, not the way a victim would, but the way a Marine would write an after-action report. Precise, calm, factual. He even included timestamps, staff badge numbers, and a few witness quotes. Then he added a line that would define everything that came after. "This isn't about me, Tom. It's about how this country treats the people who already gave it everything." He hit send. That night, as the clock ticked past midnight, he sat in his armchair and stared out the window. The street was quiet. Crickets sang. And for the first time in years, he felt that pre-mission stillness. That old feeling from the battlefield, when every sense sharpened, every breath mattered. The next morning, his phone buzzed. A text from Tom. "Got your report. Need verification before I run it. Got any witnesses?" Elijah replied, "Yes. One young man at Gate C-12 filmed it. I told him to hold off until I said go." Tom texted back, "Good. We'll do this right. No drama, just truth." Elijah smiled. That was exactly the kind of revenge he believed in, the kind that didn't destroy, just revealed. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Samantha the gate agent had no idea what storm was building. She bragged to coworkers over lunch. That old guy thought he could pull the veteran card. Bet he made it all up. Her supervisor shrugged, half listening. Careful, Sam. These days, one wrong move and you're viral. She rolled her eyes. He's probably napping in his truck somewhere. I'm fine. But she wasn't. By Thursday, a small article appeared online. Retired Marine denied boarding at Atlanta airport. Witness claims passport thrown. No names, no photos, just the story. But that was enough. Veterans forums picked it up first. Then Facebook pages for retired servicemen. Then Reddit. People started asking who was the Marine, which airline. By Friday morning, Tom called Elijah. Brother, it's catching fire. Do you want to go public? Elijah hesitated. Not yet. I don't want her name dragged through the mud. I just want the system to remember what respect looks like. Tom laughed softly. You never change, Brooks. Always fighting clean. Only way worth fighting, Elijah said. That afternoon, Elijah printed out the article and walked it into the local Veterans Affairs office. He handed it to the director, a former Army colonel who recognized him instantly. Sergeant Brooks, I've read your file. Hell, you were at Hugh, weren't you? Elijah nodded. Long time ago. This happened Tuesday. He pointed to the article. I'm not looking for pity. I'm looking for accountability. The colonel read quietly, then looked up. Give me a day. That night, as the sun fell behind the marsh, Elijah sat on his porch with a cigar he hadn't touched in years. He wasn't celebrating. He was waiting. Justice, when done right, was a slow burn, and he could wait all night. Around 10 p.m., his phone buzzed again. Tom sent another message. Major outlets calling me now. I can hold them off, but if they dig, they'll find you. Elijah texted back. Then let them. But keep the focus on behavior, not names. He leaned back, exhaled smoke into the humid air, and smiled to himself. In the distance, thunder rumbled, faint, steady, inevitable. The next morning, his neighbor, Mrs. Carter, stopped by the fence. Elijah, honey, I saw something online about a veteran and an airline. That you? He smiled gently. Just a misunderstanding, ma'am. Well, it's spreading. My nephew in Texas texted me the article. Said it's on Veteran Watch. Elijah nodded. Then maybe the message is getting where it needs to go. She looked at him thoughtfully. You're not mad. Mad doesn't fix much, Mrs. Carter. But truth gets around. By Sunday, the story had reached national veteran groups. Airline officials began investigating. And Samantha She started noticing people staring at her name badge a little too long. A coworker whispered, Hey Sam, there's a video going around. Someone filmed that thing at C-12. Her stomach dropped. What video? He pulled it up. A short clip. Her tossing the passport. The old man's calm voice. That book's seen more battlefields than you've seen boarding passes. The clip ended with silence, the crowd shifting her face, caught mid-smirk. The view count over 1 million. Samantha's hands began to shake. Her supervisor approached her desk. Corporate wants to talk to you. And just like that, the tables began to turn. Back in Savannah, Elijah's phone buzzed again. A message from Tom. The story's gone national. You won. Elijah looked out at the horizon, coffee steaming in his hand. He didn't smile, not quite. Victory wasn't the point. He muttered quietly to himself. No, Tom, I didn't win. The truth did. He looked down at the passport on his table and tapped it twice with his finger as if saluting it. The battle was far from over, but the enemy had finally been revealed. And for Elijah Brooks, that was enough to move to the next phase, the part where justice stops being quiet and starts being seen. By Monday morning, what had started as a quiet whisper turned into a nationwide storm. Every major veteran network had picked it up, the incident at Gate C-12. Cable news panels debated whether airlines treated veterans with proper respect. Talk radio lit up with callers, or many of them older men with steady, gravelly voices. saying things like, "We didn't fight for medals, we fought for decency." That man handled himself like a Marine, calm and correct. The headline on the American Ledger read, "Marines' Silent Stand at Airport Sparks National Conversation on Dignity." And beneath that, a single image, Elijah's back as he bent to pick up his passport, still silent, dignified. At corporate headquarters of the airline, the executive boardroom buzzed with tension. Screens displayed social media outrage, climbing by the hour. The CEO tapped his pen against the table. "We can't ignore this. Identify the employee, issue a statement." A PR manager hesitated. "The clip is already out there, sir. Her name's trending. Samantha Pierce. She's been doxxed." The CEO frowned. "Then it's too late for anonymity. Damage control. Public apology. Veteran outreach campaign." The room nodded, taking notes like soldiers under fire. Back in Atlanta, Samantha sat in her car outside the terminal, staring at the news feed on her phone. Her face, her uniform, her smirk everywhere. Messages flooded her inbox, insults, threats, calls for firing. She tried to breathe, but the air felt thick. Her mother called, voice trembling. "Sweetheart, what did you do? The news, it says you disrespected a Marine." Samantha's lips quivered. "It was a misunderstanding. He made me nervous." "Then why did you throw his passport?" Silence. She had no answer. By noon, reporters swarmed the terminal. Veterans in caps and jackets stood at gate C-12, quietly observing the spot like it had become sacred ground. One of them, a gray-haired former Navy officer, told a journalist, "We don't need a protest. We just need to show up." The man showed the right way to fight, calm and proud. Videos of the veterans silently standing in line went viral, captioned, "The Marines returned to gate C-12." Elijah didn't plan to go there. Not yet. He was sitting in his kitchen when the airline called. "Mr. Brooks," said the voice on the other end, smooth and careful, "we'd like to offer a formal apology. Perhaps a meeting. We're prepared to make things right." Elijah sipped his coffee. Making things right is bigger than a meeting. The caller hesitated. "We can arrange a ceremony, maybe a donation to veteran programs. And if you agree, we'd like to make it public." He smiled faintly. "Public, huh, fine. I'll come. But only if it's at gate C-12. 2 days later, the terminal looked different. There were flags now, cameras, reporters. The airline had sent out a press release. "Today, we honor the service and dignity of Sergeant Elijah Brooks, USMC RET, and reaffirm our commitment to respect for all veterans." Sounded rehearsed, but Elijah didn't care. The place mattered more than the PR. He arrived wearing his old Marine blazer and that same weathered passport tucked neatly in his pocket. The terminal fell quiet as he walked in. Every step echoed. A spokesperson took the microphone first. She talked about training updates, awareness, and commitment to better service. Her voice was polite, distant, like an apology written by a lawyer. Then they called Samantha to the podium. She looked smaller now, pale under the fluorescent lights. Her hands shook as she read the statement. "To Sergeant Brooks and to all veterans, I sincerely apologize for my behavior and for the disrespect I showed. My actions do not represent the values of this company or this country." Her voice cracked mid-sentence. Elijah watched her closely, not with anger, but with a kind of sorrow only older men understand. He remembered every time someone had spoken to him, like he was invisible. He remembered the looks, the dismissals, the years it took to earn back dignity that never should have been lost. When she finished, the room stayed quiet. No one clapped. She lowered her head, tears trembling at the edge of her eyes. Elijah stepped forward. He didn't go to the microphone. He just walked up beside her, turned to face the crowd, and said, "Respect isn't a rule, it's a choice. It doesn't start with training or policy, it starts in here." He touched his chest lightly. "And sometimes it takes being humbled to understand it." He turned to Samantha, extended his hand. For a long moment, she stared frozen. Then she took it, her grip trembling. Cameras flashed. Reporters murmured. But the terminal stayed silent, the kind of silence that means everyone in the room is actually listening. He looked at her gently. I don't need you to be sorry. I just need you to be better. Her eyes filled with tears. I will, sir. I promise. Elijah nodded once and released her hand. Then he stepped back, took out the passport and held it up. This book, he said, has been dropped in mud, rain, sand, and worse. It's been shot at, lost, recovered, and still it holds. He turned slightly toward the cameras. Because honor doesn't tear easy, and neither does patience. A soft ripple of applause began slow, respectful swelling until the whole terminal joined in. Later, as reporters crowded around, Elijah gave one brief statement. We don't heal by shouting. We heal by remembering what we stand for. And with that, he left. Outside, veterans saluted him. Some cried. A young man approached the same one who'd filmed the original video. Sir, I never thought something so small could mean so much, the kid said. Elijah smiled. That's because you still see it as small. Respect's never small, son. It's the whole damn flag. The kid nodded, eyes wet. That night, national news replayed the footage. The handshake, the line about respect. Social media called it the silence heard across America. And for once, people didn't argue in the comments. They shared stories, fathers, uncles, grandfathers, who'd served and stayed humble. Even Samantha's apology was met with empathy. She faced it, one woman wrote. That's what real accountability looks like. In Savannah, Elijah sat on his porch again, the night air cool and steady. His daughter called. Dad, I saw the news. You were amazing. He chuckled. I just showed up. That's all. You showed more than that. He looked out at the stars, quiet. Maybe. But the world needed to see what calm looks like. The next morning, his mailbox held a single envelope, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. I'm truly sorry for what I did. You taught me more in one day than I've learned in years. I've joined a local veteran support group. Thank you for your patience and for your grace. Samantha. Elijah folded the note carefully and placed it in the passport where it would stay for the rest of his life. He looked at the sky and whispered, Mission accomplished. 3 weeks passed before Elijah Brooks drove north again. This time no boarding pass, no airline. Just his old pickup humming along the back roads of Georgia, heading toward a small cemetery outside Birmingham, Alabama. The winter wind had a dry bite to it, carrying the scent of pine and gasoline. On the passenger seat sat that same weathered passport and the folded note from Samantha Pierce, the young woman who had once tossed it away, and in doing so, set a whole country on fire. Elijah smiled faintly as he glanced at the envelope. People can change, he whispered. That's the only reason the world's still turning. When he reached Oak Ridge Cemetery, the place was quiet except for a few crows and the crunch of gravel under his boots. He found the grave easily. Corporal Daniel White. The letters carved deep into stone, the small American flag fluttering weakly beside it. Elijah knelt his knees, stiff and uncooperative, and laid the passport on the marble. Missed your funeral, brother, he said softly, but I think you'd understand. I had one last mission down here. He brushed some leaves aside and sighed. You remember how you used to say the hardest battles weren't overseas, they were right here at home. You were right, Danny. Still are. For a moment he said nothing else. Just listened to the wind moving through the trees. Then he smiled, that small, knowing smile of men who've seen too much, but still find peace in little things. I didn't have to yell, didn't have to fight. I just stood my ground. And the world noticed. Hell, the whole terminal went quiet. He chuckled under his breath, the sound low and weary. Bet you're laughing about that, huh? Me teaching manners in an airport. Didn't think I had it in me. He stayed there a while, lost in thought. His memories drifted through decades, the smell of gunpowder, the heat of jungle air, the laughter of young soldiers who never made it home. He remembered how when the war ended, he came back to a country that didn't quite know what to do with him. But now, for the first time, he felt like something had come full circle. Not revenge, not justice, something quieter balance. That evening, Elijah stopped at a small roadside diner halfway home, the kind of place that still served coffee in thick white mugs and called everyone Han. The waitress, middle-aged with kind eyes, set his cup down. "You look familiar, sir. You on TV?" He smiled. "Not really. Just a guy who had a long day at an airport." Her face lit up. "Oh my lord, you're him, the Marine from Gate C-12. We all watched that video." My husband cried. Elijah chuckled softly. "He ain't the only one." She leaned in. "That was beautiful what you said, about respect. The world needed that." He nodded, humble. "Sometimes you don't have to scream to be heard." As she refilled his cup, he glanced out the window. The sun was going down soft orange, bleeding into blue. When he got home later that night, he sat on his porch again. Same chair, same view of the quiet street. He unfolded Samantha's letter and read it once more. "You taught me more in one day than I've learned in years. I've joined a local veteran outreach group. I want to help. I'll never forget what you said, that respect is a choice." He set the letter down beside his cigar, eyes glistening in the porch light. "Good girl," he murmured. "Mission accomplished." He looked up at the flag fluttering in the dark and whispered, "You see, Danny, sometimes forgiveness hits harder than fury." 2 days later, a knock came at the door. It was a young man in uniform, Army, maybe mid-20s. "Sir," he said, "sorry to bother you. I'm from the Savannah VFW post. We'd like to invite you to speak next month about what happened at Gate C-12. Elijah laughed softly. "You boys want me to lecture about manners?" The soldier grinned. "No, sir, about strength, the kind that doesn't yell." Elijah thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but only if you serve coffee stronger than mine." When the day came, the hall was full. Veterans, young and old, sat shoulder to shoulder under the faded flags of every branch. Elijah stood at the podium, the microphone squealing once before settling. He didn't have a speech prepared, he didn't need one. He just spoke from the heart. "I've seen what hate can do," he said. "Seen what pride can destroy. But at Gate C-12 I learned something I thought I already knew. You can't shame a man who knows who he is. You can't break someone who's already made peace with himself." The room stayed silent, hanging on every word. That young woman, she made a mistake. But she also made me remember what I stood for. And in the end, maybe that's what God was trying to teach both of us. Patience. Grace. The kind of justice that heals instead of hurts. He paused, looking out at the faces before him, rough-lined, weary, but proud. We wore the uniform so the world could argue freely, but we lived through it, so we'd remember when to be quiet. He smiled faintly, and I guess I just needed a noisy airport to remind me. Laughter rippled through the hall, soft but heartfelt. When he stepped down, dozens of veterans stood and saluted. Later, as he left the hall, an elderly woman in a wheelchair reached out to him. "Sergeant Brooks," she said, "my husband served in Korea. He would have loved your story." Elijah knelt beside her and took her hand. "Then I'll tell it for him, ma'am." She smiled. "God bless you, son." He smiled back. "He already has." That night he returned home and placed the passport back on the table. Its corners were frayed, its pages filled. But now inside it, tucked neatly in the middle, was Samantha's letter. He closed the cover, ran a thumb over the gold eagle emblem, and whispered, "Still flying." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the flag gently against its pole. Elijah leaned back in his chair, let the sound wash over him, and closed his eyes. The world was loud again, but he had earned his quiet. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like payback. Sometimes it looks like teaching someone how to stand taller. Sergeant Elijah Brooks never wanted fame. He never wanted headlines or speeches. He just wanted the world to remember that honor still means something. And at Gate C-12, when a room full of strangers fell silent, the lesson was clear. Honor doesn't shout, it stands.